Welcome to the Whiskey Cast Tasting Panel. I'm Mark Gillespie. Each month we get together with whiskey lovers just like you to taste and rate whiskeys. And this time around, we're doing it as a way to give something back to the community. After the October 27th mass shooting at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that left 11 people dead, the Pittsburgh Whiskey Friends Whiskey Club invited us to come to their city for a charity tasting to benefit HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. It's a group that works to help resettle refugees in the United States, and it took about 10 seconds for us to say we'd be honored. On November 26th, we recorded the tasting with 4 panelists and a live audience at the Elks Club Lodge 3309 in downtown Pittsburgh, just a few blocks from PNC Park, the home of the Pittsburgh Pirates. One of the seats on the panel was raffled off as part of the benefit, and you'll meet the winner in just a minute. And as you'll also hear, I issued a challenge to help raise some more money as well. I wish we could have been there under happier circumstances, but it was a good evening, and you'll hear it all right after this. Support for the Whiskey Cast Tasting Panel comes from the Whiskey Exchange, one of the world's leading whiskey retailers, offering worldwide delivery with a range of more than 9,000 different whiskeys and spirits. The Singh brothers, Sukhinder and Raj, opened the Whiskey Exchange in 1999 with a simple philosophy: to offer the best whiskeys at competitive prices. You'll find everything from Amrit to Yamazaki on their website, including just about every single malt you can think of, and plenty you may not have, including their own single cask bottlings and distillery exclusives from around the world. With the holidays coming up, check out their bespoke bottle engraving service, the Perfect Measure sample gift packs, or if you want to keep Santa in a good mood, why not pick up a whiskey-filled bauble or two? The Whiskey Exchange has been regarded for years as one of the world's top whiskey shops. The Huffington Post called it Scotch whiskey's cathedral. If you're visiting London, stop by one of their shops in Covent Garden and Fitzrovia, or you can visit them online at thewhiskeyexchange.com, along with Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Are we ready to have some fun here?
Absolutely. Ready.
I think there is one order of business that we need to take care of first. I believe there was a bet that I sort of kind of lost that we were trying to raise a little extra money for the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, HIAS, in honor of the Tree of Life Synagogue victims. And I believe last night I said something on the social media channels to the effect that if we could get $500 in donations today before this little shindig started, that this long-standing Philadelphia Flyers fan would stoop to making the ultimate sacrifice and take one for the team and wear a Penguins jersey for the night. Scott?
That sounds about right.
Pick one. Let's do this.
Okay. Well, we have 3 different styles. We got 2 Crosbys. We got a Malkin, traditional black and gold. We got 2 of the Winter Classics.
Philly boy's got to wear a Crosby jersey.
Crosby? All right, guys.
Bright blue.
Original Winter Classic or the old Vegas Gold?
Vegas gold.
The classic?
Promise you won't know.
Oh, I know.
Grady says it's okay.
Yeah. May Grady forgive me for this. Okay, anybody live streaming this?
You say, does this work on radio?
Looks very nice. Nice.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said that feels better than you expected, doesn't it?
It's actually my size.
we're the same size then.
But then again, Crosby wears a small too. So I'm kidding. I should point out that while I kid about the Penguins, I will admit honestly and openly that if I did not live in the Philadelphia area, I would most likely be a Penguins fan. You guys have got a hell of a team here. Maybe not this year yet, but let's have some fun now. And I'm really glad that you guys all came out tonight. I know this was the opening day of deer season, a school holiday and everything over here. And some of you guys could have been out hunting deer today, but you chose to come hang out with us and drink some whiskeys. So let's meet the tasting panel. We will start at the far end of the table. One of the iconic voices of Western Pennsylvania public media. You know him, you love him, Rick Seaback.
Good evening.
Rick, tell us about your history with whiskey.
My history with whiskey.
Yeah, how'd you get started? How'd you learn to like whiskey in the first place? Tell me about your first experience.
I think, actually, I was a foreign exchange student to Rio. I remember going out one night and we drank all whiskey. And I think I will always remember that as my baptism by fire, I guess. It was too much for, 16-year-old Rick. I don't know.
Do you remember what you were drinking that night?
No, I have no idea. We were just having whiskey in a nightclub. But then, as I was explaining to some of the people here earlier, my name is Slovak, but my mother was all Irish, so I've had lots of experience traveling to Ireland 6 or 7 times and, living with a peat fire for a couple of weeks and stuff like that. So it's, maybe in my blood. I had a grandfather, I think, who drank too much, so that's probably my history.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Well, the guys from the Pittsburgh Whiskey Friends did the invitations, and let's meet a couple of the members of the club right now. Bobby Long is our next member, and Bobby, tell us about your first experience with whiskeys.
We're going to have to go back a ways. I'd probably say somewhere around age 21. I had my first whiskey, and it was Wild Turkey 101 and Black Velvet. I still like Wild Turkey 101. I don't really love Canadian whiskey that much anymore. There are a few that really will still get me, but that's where my roots are. Probably Jack Daniels, Wild Turkey, Jim Beam. Started all out there, and as I got a little bit older, I wanted to try things that were a bit more complex, and that kind of took me down that rabbit hole. Now I have 250, 300 different options later, and I'm still loving it, so far so good.
Great. Scott Rittenbaugh is a longtime Whiskey Cast listener and has been bugging me for a long time to come to Pittsburgh and do one of these tastings, and I am so glad I did. Thank you for inviting me, Scott, and tell us about the club for those who are listening to the podcast about the Pittsburgh Whiskey Friends.
So the Pittsburgh Whiskey Friends, we actually just this past summer celebrated our 2nd anniversary. The group was started by Aaron Hyduke, and he was going to be here tonight, but because Aaron is just a go-getter, he's at home taking care of work problems right now. So we wish we were here, Aaron, but we're going to have some fun without you.
That's what he told you. He's deer hunting.
There you go.
And our final panelist, Christian Kale, won the raffle to be part of this tasting panel. Let's give him some applause here for Christian, tell us about how you got into whiskeys in the first place, and what's the best whiskey experience you've ever had other than tonight?
So in college, I was mostly a beer person, but I always kind of had that backdrop of Jack and Coke, which is my thing I love to have. After college, I started trying different whiskeys and ended up trying Edgehour, 10-year-old cask strength, non-chill filtered. It was the first real Scotch, real whiskey I ever had, and just completely fell in love with it. My favorite experience, Aberlour Bunda, batch number 14. It was the most ethereal whiskey I've ever tasted. It was just amazing. And I had a 14, I had a 16. Just loved them.
I have always had a soft spot in my heart for Aberlours. I envy you trying a batch 14 Abuna. Those haven't been around in a long time.
It's been a while.
Well, we have 4 whiskeys to try tonight. Unfortunately, none of them is the Aberlour Abuna. But we will start off with the first one. It's the Dad's Hat, I think. Is this the regular Pennsylvania Rye Dad's Hat?
It's their pre-prohibition style.
Ah, okay.
So they just released it.
And we should note that they donated the whiskeys for their whiskey for tonight, as did, I think pretty much all of our whiskeys were donated for the evening to comply with PLCB law, the State Liquor Control Board. So let's get your noses in the far glass on your left. And while they're doing that, I believe we have the samples in the back if we want to start bringing them around. Or if you guys want to go up in the audience, you can go back to the bar and grab a set of these so we can try them as well. Let me explain the scoring system that we use on the Whiskey Cast tasting panel right now. The way it works is simple. We score 0 to 5 points. Half points are acceptable. You will have 1 score for the entire whiskey. Essentially, you'll nose it, taste it neat first, then add a little bit of water to taste. You can talk about anything you want to as far as the whiskey, but do not disclose your scores. The reason we do that is because we don't want peer impact on the scores. What we're going to do at the end is take these scores, average them up, and we will report an average score for each whiskey. So while everybody is coming back from the bar with their samples now, guys, tell me what you get on the nose for this Dad's Hat Pre-Prohibition Rye.
A lot of spice.
A little bit of mint.
What kind of spice, Christian? Anything in particular?
Just a standard rye spice, like dryish, but very rich too.
Okay. Down at the other end, Rick, Bob?
Already a nice zing. It excites my nose.
Okay.
I think to play off of your zing a little bit, I would go even as far as like almost a clove, a little bit of black pepper with the floral rye notes. The floral rye really pops out there.
Mm-hmm.
Any other notes come to mind on the nose?
It's sweeter on the nose than I expected it to be.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and taste it and see what your impressions are there. Once again, this is the Dad's Hat Pennsylvania Pre-Prohibition Rye Whiskey from the eastern side of the state at Dad's Hat over in Bristol, PA, just north of Philly. Mm-hmm. We want to thank Herman Mihalich and John Cooper, the guys who run Dad's Hat, for donating their whiskey for tonight. What do you think on the taste? Anything come to mind?
Earthy sweetness with some honey, a little bit of vanilla, pinch of caramel. It's very faint, though.
You've done this before.
A couple times.
Okay.
The last word was paint?
Paint. No. Did you get some paint?
No, did you?
No.
Is it paint or paint thinner?
No, no, it's not that strong.
Well, no, because sometimes you'll get this nice little linseed oil note, like a paint thinner, almost like a turpentine in some whiskeys, which is why I was asking about it.
No, I can see that.
Good spicy bite.
Okay.
It is. It's good.
I was going to say the pepper really seemed. I mean, the first sip is always the best.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you know, it was a lovely surprise.
So I like my whiskey to fight back a little bit, and having a little bit of spice can do that. Right.
Scott?
A little bit like a fennel seed to it.
Interesting. There are no wrong answers here, so.
Sounds like a challenge to me.
Go for it. No, there are no wrong answers because each of us has our own individual sense of smell, and the aromas we pick up are merely mental memories. So there's really no argument you can make with somebody's tasting notes because we all have our own different things that we pick up that we're all sensitive to and that we know we all like. So I'm not going to criticize anybody who says they get something specific out of a whiskey if I don't get it, and I hope other people don't criticize me when they don't understand what the hell I'm talking about either.
It's definitely a cleaner taste. It's not heavy esters, just nice and clean.
Okay. Let's add some water, see what that does to it. We also want to thank the folks at the Elks Club, the Lodge 3309 here in Pittsburgh, for hosting us this evening. You may hear some noise in the background. I think there's an earthquake going on back there, or just the bowling alley.
I think the water makes it brighter.
Yeah, it's softer and fruitier for sure.
Definitely.
Sweeter.
Yes, takes away some of that pepper.
So it opens up nicely then.
What's the bottle ABV on this?
I believe it's 95 proof.
Yes.
So that would make it 47.5. Normally I have the bottles here with me, but the bottles are being kept back at the bar, so I don't have them in front of me to look at. So 47.5.
It definitely
So-
takes the bite out.
It does.
Thoughts from out here? What do you guys think of this one? Go ahead and shout it out.
I get like a lot of virgin oak and pepper spice.
I would say a little oak and some hint of rose almost.
A hint of what?
Rose.
Okay.
I think adding the water adds a little bit of sweetness into it. More than
A lot of sweetness.
It really does.
Almost like a little orange marmalade.
It transforms it.
I'm not trying to bite me anymore.
Okay. Great. Do we like this one?
Yes.
Most definitely.
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and write down the scores for the Dad's Hat pre-Prohibition straight rye whiskey from Pennsylvania. And we will move on to our second whiskey. This one is new to the U.S. We've talked about this one a lot on WhiskeyCast the last few weeks. This is the new Powers 3 Swallow release for the U.S. market, the first export market to get it. Until now, it came out about 3 years ago in Ireland and was only sold there. And it's one of those whiskeys that after I brought a bottle back on that when it first came out in 2015 near the end of the year, I was immediately advised that I needed to bring more of that on future trips because it wasn't available here. And that first bottle didn't make it through the weekend once the family got a hold of it. And as we noted on the last episode of WhiskeyCast, the U.S. version is actually stronger than the Irish version for tax reasons. This one is bottled at 43.2% ABV, while the Irish domestic version is bottled at 40%, because the Irish government charges higher taxes the higher the strength. And they wanted to keep this at a reasonable price, so they couldn't really crank up the ABV on it. This is a single pot still Irish whiskey, which means it's distilled in a pot still, like a single malt, but it's made from a combination of malted and unmalted barley. In that case, in that line, it's very similar to a redbreast. And I'm going to be eager to see what you think, if you guys like this one as much as I have. I'm already seeing smiles out in the audience. We want to thank the folks at Pernod Ricard USA and Powers Irish Whiskey, the U.S. team, for donating this whiskey as well for tonight. Thoughts?
It's not nearly as brutal. And it almost reminds me of grass.
Okay. One of the notes I get on single pot stills like this one is I'll get like a straw or a dried straw, things like that, dried grass. So I can understand that one really easily. What else do you think, guys?
You get like a raw honey.
Okay.
I feel like there's a bit of a tart fruit and a cherry zest, like a tart apple. I would say almost like a green apple peel, more so than biting into the lusher part of the fruit. I really enjoy the soft wood, too. It almost adds like a vanilla with oats.
Christian?
You were about to say something?
The barrel and tannin contributions aren't as strong to the nose for this one. It's much lighter.
We do not have an age statement on this one, by the way. Go ahead and take a taste. Let's see what you think of this one.
It's much, much lighter. It's the difference between the rye and oak barley.
Okay.
Very gentle.
Rick?
Yeah, fruity. It's a lot sweeter and smoother than the Dad's Hat.
Scott?
I definitely get that green apple that Bobby was talking about. It's almost like a tartness to it.
I feel that tartness for sure. I think it plays really well with more of like a riper red fruit too. The malted cereal sweetness and the soft vanilla accents in here are very fun. I might go as far as to say it's my favorite Irish whiskey. I don't think I've had one that was this kind. Usually they're a little bit smokier than I was expecting.
Okay. Let's try this one with some water while we get thoughts from out there. What do you guys think?
Banana.
Ooh.
Big banana.
Big banana.
Reminded me a lot of Middleton.
Yeah, same distillery. Of the Middleton Very Rares or the Barry Crockett? Which one? Which Middleton?
Actually, there's a moment of Barry Crockett. Doesn't finish like Barry Crockett.
Yeah, because the Crockett is a single pot still. But the Middleton Very Rare is a blend, so... Any other thoughts?
I can't quite describe it, but I'm wondering if rose water is like...
Rose water? Sure. Okay. How does the water affect this one?
Gave it a little bit more of a bite, whereas before it didn't have that kind of bite at the end.
I think the nose is more muted after the water.
Yeah, most definitely. Still a lot of banana in it.
Yeah, that banana note's hard to get rid of once you think about it.
I know.
Yeah, exactly. Whether it's actually there or not, it's there.
It actually seems creamier after
It
the
does.
water.
I think
Yeah.
the water definitely creamed it up some.
Any thoughts, Rick?
I'm tasting it a lot at the back of the roof of my mouth. I'm not sure what that means.
It means it's tingling a little bit, I would think.
Yeah, I like the comment that it, with the water added made it a little have a little more bite.
Yeah.
Which is the exact opposite effect of the first one. And I enjoyed that bite.
Good. Any thoughts from out there? Once you've had, I don't know if you guys got enough to have some water in there, but if you put some in, but what did you think?
I brought up some cherries.
Cherries?
Cherry wasn't there before.
Okay. Well, let's write down your scores for the Powers 3 Swallow. And while we have a chance, I want to bring Raj Sabharwal from Glass Revolution Imports, based here in Pittsburgh, up, because Raj brought us a bottle on very short notice. Last night he volunteered to bring some Amrut Fusion from India. And Raj donated this one and is here tonight and is also going to offer us a little experience to raffle off here. So, Raj, tell us first of all about the Fusion.
So which one is it on the table? Is it number 3?
It's number 3.
Number 3. Okay, so Amrut Fusion, this is a tin for it. Made in India, family-owned distillery, been around since 1948. They didn't start releasing single malts into the world market until 2004. And then Fusion was released in 2010. That year, the previous year, Malt Maniacs called it Best Daily Dram. When it came out, Jim Murray in the Whiskey Bible that year called it third best whiskey in the world. Gave it 97 points. And Malt Advocate at the time, before it became Whiskey Advocate, named it World Whiskey of the Year. And it continues to win awards every year. What's really unique about it is they make a single malt out of Indian barley, which is their traditional single malt, and then they get peated barley from Scotland and make that into a peated single malt. For the fusion, they take 75% of the traditional single malt and 25% of the peated and marry the two together and age them together. If you want to pick it up, do you want to lead the tasting or?
Well, yeah. Let's talk about the experience that you.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Good. So I'm one of the few WSET spirits educators in the U.S. And one of the things I like to do is really get people experiences on things. So one thing that I'm doing next week on Tuesday or Wednesday, I can't remember the date. Wednesday. I'm going to do a class on comparing the same whiskey but different barrels to show you what the effect of wood is on the whiskey. 60 to 70% of the flavor of whiskey comes from the barrel. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 3 pairs of whiskeys. Each pair will be exactly the same whiskey, same age, but either aged or finished in different barrels. And they're all single cask strength, so it'll give you a real experience on that. So we have, it's going to be held at Dreadnought Wines 3401 Liberty in Lawrenceville, and I think they donated 2 tickets for it to attend. So I guess we'll have a draw later for see who's going to make it.
Well, who has the raffle tickets?
Back at the bar.
Back at the bar? Why don't you draw? Do we want to give it away as a pair?
We haven't done we haven't sold the tickets yet.
Okay.
All right. So I guess there's raffle tickets to be sold, and that's one of the prizes. So.
Okay. So we will do that in a little bit. So thank you, Raj.
All right.
So let's get into the Amrut fusion. Once again, we've heard the story about this one. It is a mix of Indian barley and Scottish barley, and it is bottled at 50% ABV. And this should be interesting. I always love pouring Amrut at things like this because a lot of folks seem to always want to mistake it for a single malt Scotch. And then when you tell them it's from India, they go, what? Unless they've heard of Amrut. Then they know. But so what do you think on the nose, guys?
It's got a lot going on.
It's very complex. You can definitely tell there's peat in here. I mean, it's gentle, but you can tell it's just kind of like there.
Rick?
I laughed when I saw that the peat had some medicinal references there, but I definitely get that. There's something about that. The smell that says medicine to me.
It's phenolics, yeah. It definitely has it in there. I love that myself.
But pleasant. Yeah.
I think that the smoky campfire plays a bit with almost like a citrus note that brings in some sweetness on top of a not really... Like everything else that I have is not sweet. It's spicy, it's clove, it's cinnamon, it's anise. And then there's this like sweet citrus.
To play off of what Bobby just said, the first thing that I thought was maple. And it just jumped out at me. It was just this sweet maple note.
Any bacon to go along with that?
Maybe. We'll see when we taste.
Well, with the peat, you might just get some. Go for it. Let's find out what you think on the taste. Show of hands in the crowd. Have any of you had the chance to try Amrut Fusion before? Raj, don't raise your hand. Only 1 or 2. 3, 4. Great. I can't wait to find out what you guys think of this.
It's an interesting finish.
It's very interesting.
Lots of tannins. You can taste the peat, but there's a really strong sweetness to it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is sweet.
And smoky.
Mm-hmm.
more smoky than anything we've had.
Absolutely.
Somebody behind us in the bowling alley appears to be having a hell of a night back there, judging from all the pins I hear crashing. Either that or the Steelers' offensive line is doing a conga dance back there. Go ahead and add some water to this one.
Ooh, that was a little much. I'm definitely getting an earthy honey note.
Is it raw honey, clover, like a honeycomb type note? What are you thinking?
Probably more like the honeycomb. It's just a really kind of aromatic kind of.
The water brings out the smoke a lot more for me.
I didn't want to hear that.
Water, again, mutes the nose.
Okay. Rick, thoughts?
Actually, the water's made it a little more intense to me, which I like. I'm not sure what all those tastes are, but I like the word earthy.
Okay.
And that may be a combination of the smoke and all the other things. But no, it's I know it's big.
That it is.
Being a Scotch lover, this is awesome.
Thoughts out here in the audience, guys. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, love this one.
I have the complexity that's much like cola. You know, there's vanilla and lavender and lime and cinnamon all mixed together with this wonderful smoky note. And it's kind of reminiscent of Highland Park for me, though there's additional floral complexity that pops in a way that Highland Park doesn't.
Okay.
See, I'm getting a lot of spearmint on the back end. Does anybody else get that burn?
Highland Park whiskey. I thought he meant Highland Park.
Like the place he's been to.
Like a neighborhood.
What's that down there, guys? We can't hear you out
Well,
here.
you said it tastes like Highland Park, and I thought, it's
Walking
Regent
around,
Square.
Going
We have a neighborhood in Pittsburgh called Highland Park.
Yeah, that's a local
That's
joke.
funny. We have a whiskey in Scotland called Highland Park. Hashtag whiskey
But I
cast
think your
sponsor. Thank you
description
very
was
much.
perfect. It's cinnamony. It's and that complexity. I like that. The cola stuff. I think that's really true.
Now, go ahead and write down your scores for the Amrut Fusion. And we'll go on to our fourth and final whiskey. And this one comes from just down the road. Down, I think, Interstate 79 to be specific.
Yep.
In Washington, Pennsylvania, from Liberty Pole Spirits. And come on up. I want you to, you brought this along. I want you to, we're going to draft you to come up here.
Down 79, take a right on Jefferson Avenue, and
Yep.
you're right there.
And you're going to shoot me. I've forgotten your name.
John.
John.
I'm out of the Institute, so.
Okay, thanks, Jim. So, John, tell us about this one. This is a peated bourbon of all
So
things.
this is a peated bourbon. It's going to be 59% Bloody Butcher corn, which is grown locally right down the road from there. The other, the peated malt comes from Scotland. That's kind of a mystery because even I don't know the mash bill on this. So
I use Baird's peated malt, and I think it's about 25%. I think that Jim told me something like that once.
if you got Jim that drunk, go for it. But yeah, I asked yesterday. I said, in case I speak, what's the mash bill? He goes, oh, we keep that a secret. So
Yeah, I thought so.
yeah.
And this is aged for about 15 months.
So
It is
this
bottled
one is about 15 months.
at 46%.
Absolutely, yes.
So I've actually had the chance to try this before because they brought this to the American Whiskey Festival in Philadelphia a couple of years ago when they first came out with it.
So I've had the chance to try this, and I really enjoyed trying it. So it'll be fun to see what you guys think of this tonight. John, thank you for coming up and for bringing the whiskey tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get your noses into the Liberty Pole Spirits Peated Bourbon Whiskey. Once again, bottled at 46% ABV, aged for about 15 months.
Definitely a lot of dryness.
Okay.
Dry.
And also a lot of aromas off the barrel, a lot of tannin.
It's taken a lot out of the barrel in that 15 months, I think.
Yeah, and there's a caramel note to it, sweetness.
Okay. Scott?
It's like an earthy sweetness. And I think that's from that Bloody Butcher corn. It's more unctuous, kind of oily in texture.
So I think oily is an excellent note. I would go as far as to say my first thought was it was like a freshly opened plastic toy, in the sense that I get like a nearly artificial note was the first thing that I got, and on top of that, there's like a burnt paper and a honey and a little bit of a leathery body that carries a lot of the notes through.
Okay, Rick?
More fruity than I expected, but I think it's that sweetness and. Now, of course, all I smell is plastic toy.
This is why we don't let anybody discuss their actual scores. See that peer impact I was talking about? Go ahead and taste it. I have to admit, this Crosby jersey's getting comfortable.
That's what winning feels like.
Oh.
He's not used to that.
Ooh.
Nor are we.
Yeah. I won't even bring up the Super Bowl last year.
Good, because you're not wearing a football jersey.
That's right. And we suck this year. We have regressed to the mean in Philly.
It's a Super Bowl hangover.
Well, we still have exactly twice as many Stanley Cups as we do Super Bowls. And it'll probably be 40 years before we win another Super Bowl.
I'm surprised by how biting it is.
Okay.
Front of my tongue. Needly. Because it didn't. The smell of it didn't prepare me for that. But I like it.
Okay.
I tend to like them all without the water.
We have been joking around about sports for most of the evening tonight. Trivia question. First one to get this right gets a Whiskey Cast Glencairn glass. Name the last professional basketball team in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh Spiders. Condors?
What?
Condors?
Bingo. Come on up. There you go.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Thanks. And what's your name?
Matt.
Matt, congratulations.
Thank you.
Now, you weren't even around when the Condors were playing back in the ABA days, were you?
No, but also I wasn't around when the Hornets played hockey, and I know about that.
Regrettably, I am old enough to remember when the Pittsburgh Condors played in the ABA because I was watching them play the Pacers in Indianapolis when I was growing up there. Okay, let's add some water to this if you haven't already. Thoughts out in the crowd. What do you think of this one?
On the nose, I get a lot of oolong tea and a little barnyard nose.
Okay.
Yeah, a hint of like hay and sawdust almost.
You guys are good. We'll have to come back and do more of these if
I like
you guys are this good.
Juxtaposition of oolong tea in the barnyard.
Yeah, I like the barnyard. That's good.
A little bit of lacquer.
Lacquer, okay.
Yeah.
You got walnut oil.
Walnut oil, good.
Before the
Okay. A little bit of tobacco before the water. Way back. You don't have to raise your hand back there. It's okay. Just shout it out.
We're so impressed with how young and how it's very young and new it tastes. It's delicious. Very young, very.
It's definitely mouthful, yeah.
All those things, but that's just so bold.
Okay, what does the water do to this?
Brings out the corn.
Mm-hmm.
Sweetness.
Brings out the corn.
Sweeter.
To me, this is kind of almost like an Islay Scotch. That there's a lot of smoke, there's a lot of sweetness. The barrel is a little stronger than you get with a Scotch, but it's very much like an Islay Scotch.
Okay. Bobby?
I get a lot of cracked peppercorn. I get a little bit of that spice on the back end of my smoke, and the smoke kind of blends in with like a dry leaves, earthier note, a little bit woodsy. I kind of want to immediately remove my water.
Scott?
I'm getting creme brulee.
Creme brulee?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, that's actually kind of interesting because that was one of the tasting notes on the single barrel was a creme brulee. So the single barrel 2 was a creme brulee note with some red fruits on the front.
Jim will be proud.
Let's go ahead and write down the scores for the Liberty Pole Spirits Peated Bourbon Whiskey. That is our flight of 4 for this tasting panel. We will take a short break, tabulate the scores, give away a few more glasses, I think, and maybe have that raffle drawing at some point, and we will come back with the scores. You are listening to the Whiskey Cast Tasting Panel, recorded live tonight in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
There's nothing quite like sharing good whiskeys with good friends, and each month we honor a whiskey club as our Club of the Month. You might think it would be logical for us to pick the Pittsburgh Whiskey Friends as the Club of the Month this time around, but it turns out they've already won Club of the Month honors before. So we're picking the Scotch Drinkers Book Club of Indianapolis, Indiana, as our Whiskey Club of the Month. They not only get together to taste whiskeys, but talk about their favorite books, and they've even traveled together to Scotland as a group. We'll be sending them 24 Whiskey Cast Glencairn glasses to use at their club tastings. And congratulations to the Scotch Drinkers Book Club, our Whiskey Club of the Month. If you have a whiskey club and you'd like to be considered for Club of the Month honors on a future episode, all you have to do is email us. The address is comments@whiskeycast.com. Tell us all about your club, and if you have a website, we'll be glad to add your club to our list of whiskey clubs around the world. It's in the pub section at whiskeycast.com. Who knows? Your club might just be our next Whiskey Club of the Month. Thanks to Glencairn Crystal for helping us honor the Whiskey Club of the Month.
Welcome back to the Whiskey Cast Tasting Panel. We have... I'm sorry, Rick? What?
No, I'm sorry?
Microphones are live again, guys.
No, it's just interesting to be able to taste them all now after the fact.
Yeah. Did it
And
change
they
your
taste
opinions
different.
at all?
Yes, yes.
Too late to change your scores, though.
No. We can't change our scores now, but I would say that the Indian one now I think might be my favorite, which wasn't true of my scores.
Okay. Well, you're going to love this when we go through the scores here, because I think this may be the closest we've ever come yet to a 4-way tie in a tasting panel. We have a grand total of basically about 1/8 of a point separating all 4 whiskeys. We'll start off with the 2 that tied for the bottom, with an average score of 3.75. Both the Liberty Pole Spirits Peated Bourbon Whiskey and the Amrut Fusion.
Wow.
The other tie between Dad's Hat and Powers 3 Swallow was at 3.875. Basically, essentially about 1/10 of a point between all 4 of them. That is the closest we have ever had.
Wow.
Was it that hard to pick between these guys?
I thought they were all great.
Yeah.
I really did. you know, I'd be happy to get any one of these.
Are you hinting or what? Yeah, Christmas is coming up, so any surprises in that?
Surprised at how they change in this process. And I was explaining to Scott that I when I do tastings, I often try to not give the score till after I've tasted them all. But I followed your rules today.
Thank you.
And I don't know. It's I don't know. They're all a delight for the tongue.
Any other thoughts from our panel?
They were all very unique. Each one was totally different.
Very different. I was shocked how good the Powers was. As not really a big fan of Irish whiskey in general, it shocked me with its sweetness. It really did.
Okay. Christian?
The Amaret and the Liberty Pole, to me, being a Scotch drinker, both of those, right along with just the flavors that I love, they both were incredibly good. And, you know, the Amaret had just a nice, gentle smokiness to it. Liberty Pole is just more in your face with the smoke, but still not harsh, or at least not for me. But yeah, I love those two the best.
Did you learn anything from this?
I need to drink more Scotch.
No arguments there.
I'd like to know more. You had talked about a malted barley and a non-malted. When something is a non-malted, what does that mean?
Well, you know that malting is essentially germination.
Okay.
You start the germination process by getting a barley grain wet, letting it start to sprout with heat over a few days, and then stopping that in the kiln by drying it.
Okay.
And unmalted barley is just basically the dried, essentially from the field, dried out. But then the malted barley, that's why they do it to essentially crack the shell of the barley husk a little bit, let it develop more sweetness, more of those sugars as it germinates a little bit. It starts sprouting a little bit, and that's where you get all those extra starches and sugars that are converted into alcohol, which is why you have some bourbons that will use a little bit of malted barley. Mm-hmm. A lot of them will, to help jumpstart that fermentation process.
Okay.
Well, traditionally, the Irish didn't tax the unmalted grains as much as the malted grains. So that's why you'll see a lot of the Irish whiskeys being like an 80-20 mix or something similar to that, because they just don't want to pay the taxes on it, which understandable.
Right. That all goes back to when Ireland was still part of Great Britain, and the kings and queens at the time were listening to Sir Arthur Guinness of Guinness Brewing fame, who was essentially trying to get the distillers run out of business, so he got the crown to impose taxes on the malt they were using, but not the barley he was using for his beer. So that's why they all switched to combinations of malted and unmalted barley. So, show of hands out here. Who thought the Powers was their favorite? How about the Amrut? How about the Dad's Hat? And the Liberty Pole? You guys already got to score up here. I would say it's pretty much a tie between the Powers and the Amrut. Is that pretty much a fair guess? Great. Well, I hope you guys had fun doing this. I hope everybody out there had fun. It's been a great evening, and we will come back and do this when we have a happier reason to come together rather than coming together in the wake of a tragedy. Hopefully we can come back here and either celebrate a Stanley Cup championship for the Penguins, for you guys, or the Flyers for us, and let's just hope that they don't play each other on the way. Thank you again for doing this. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did. This has been a hoot, and thanks again.
Thanks again to the Pittsburgh Whiskey Friends for inviting us to help them with a fundraiser for HIAS, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, in memory of the Tree of Life Synagogue shooting victims. We've posted a link for the HIAS website in the show notes for this episode at whiskeycast.com if you'd like to join us in supporting this worthy cause. Our panelists again, Rick Seaback, Christian Kale, Bobby Long, and Scott Rittenbaugh, who also provided the Sidney Crosby Penguins jersey I wore that night. You can see a photo of all five of us at whiskeycast.com. And thanks again to Dad's Hat, Powers, Amrut, and Liberty Pole Spirits for donating the whiskeys we tasted in this episode. If you'd like to be on the panel for an upcoming episode of the Whiskey Cast Tasting Panel, all you have to do is email comments@whiskycast.com and please put Tasting Panel in the subject line. Let us know where you live and whether you have Skype on your computer. That's how we bring our panelists together for virtual tastings. But if I'm going to be in your area, we might just bring some whiskey lovers together for an in-person tasting. That email address again is comments@whiskycast.com. That's also where you can share your comments about the show, and I hope you'll also share the Whiskey Cast Tasting Panel with your friends, too. You can also help other whiskey lovers discover the show by leaving reviews or ratings for us at iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to join us for the latest whiskey news and more cask-strength conversation on Whiskey Cast. The Whiskey Cast Tasting Panel is brought to you by the Whiskey Exchange, offering worldwide delivery of more than 9,000 whiskeys and spirits at thewhiskeyexchange.com. The Whiskey Cast Tasting Panel is a production of Cask Strength Media, copyright 2018. I'm Mark Gillespie, reminding you that when you drink, please drink responsibly. Thanks for listening.